Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, a federal judge tosses two high-profile indictments from the Justice Department. The DOJ says it will appeal. Could the cases against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James be brought back? Arlene Richards explains. President Trump says, quote, something good might be happening in peace efforts between Russia and Ukraine. Mario Tzu brings us more on that, plus what the president discussed during his call with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. That's as Russia says it doesn't support a revised peace plan drafted in Geneva yesterday. Arian Pazdar has what the Kremlin is saying and how Ukraine is responding. The Trump administration moving to designate certain chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations. What President Trump says in his executive order. The Pentagon is investigating Democratic Senator Mark Kelly. It's after he and a few other Democratic lawmakers urged members of the military to defy illegal orders. Jack Bradley reports.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. A federal judge dismissed the indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James today. She said the appointment of interim U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan was unlawful. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
Former FBI Director James Comey and New York State Attorney General Letitia James shared a victory after a federal judge dismissed the indictments against them. Judge Cameron Curry, a South Carolina District Court judge who was selected to review the Virginia case, found that the appointment of interim U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan was invalid. She said the appointment was unlawful because Halligan wasn't working for the government at the time when she was appointed. Therefore, Attorney General Pam Bondi could not authorize her to present cases against Comey or James to a grand jury. Comey was charged with making false statements and obstruction in connection with his testimony to Congress in 2020. James was charged with mortgage fraud related to her purchase of a Virginia home and whether she lied to obtain favorable loan terms. 2 weeks ago, Judge Cameron openly expressed doubts about Halligan's appointment during a hearing on the matter. She then confirmed that Halligan was the sole government official to present both cases to the panel. In Friday's order, Cameron said all actions flowing from Ms. Halligan's defective appointment, including the indictments against Comey and James, were unlawful exercises of executive power. The indictments were dismissed without prejudice, leaving open the possibility that the cases can be brought again, alleging the same conduct. However, the statute of limitations has already passed for Comey's case, which means the Justice Department can't bring the same charges against him. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the administration will appeal.
And it is our position that Lindsey Halligan is extremely qualified for this position, but more importantly, was legally appointed to it.
Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Comey reacted to the ruling in a video posted on Instagram, accusing President Trump of using the DOJ to target his political enemies. Comey said he is innocent and, quote, not afraid. President Trump saying that something good might just be happening in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, and the president discussing trade and upcoming state visits with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mario Tzu, who's standing by at the White House. Mari, good evening.
Tiff, good evening. Yes, President Trump is expressing optimism today, saying that something good may just be happening between Russia and Ukraine. This is coming after President Trump on Sunday criticized Ukrainian leadership for, quote, having zero gratitude for his administration's efforts at brokering peace, to which Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responded by thanking President Trump and a flurry of other world leaders. And while the White House says that there is currently no meeting scheduled between President Trump and Zelensky, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is optimistic about the deal and says this.
We arrived here today with one goal, and the goal was to take, 28 points or 26 points, depending on which version as it continued to evolve, and try to narrow the ones that were open items. And we have achieved that today in a very substantial way.
This is coming as the U.S. and Ukraine release a joint statement saying there's now a refined peace framework after talks in Geneva Sunday.
It is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue maybe in the entirety of our engagement, but certainly in a very long time.
The Kremlin saying that the U.S. proposal could, in principle, form the basis for a final peace settlement, and the White House pushing back on critics who call the proposed peace plan a setback for Ukraine.
The idea that the United States of America is not engaging with both sides equally in this war to bring it to an end is a complete and total fallacy. I have watched as the president and his team have worked around the clock overnight with both sides on endless phone calls, endless meetings to try to bring this war to a close.
And saying it wants to stick to President Trump's Thursday deadline for Ukraine to accept the plan. Meanwhile, President Trump says he discussed Russia-Ukraine, fentanyl, soybeans, and other farm products with CCP leader Xi Jinping on the phone today.
Almost 1.5 million metric tons. We have every indication they will continue to buy soybeans, sorghum, etc. But it goes to the larger effort of President Trump. We can't be so reliant as Americans producing American products on one country, a foreign adversary.
President Trump also announces that he'll be visiting Xi Jinping in Beijing in April at Xi's invitation, and that after that, Xi will be coming to the U.S. for a state visit later that year. And this call is coming after President Trump met with Xi Jinping on the sidelines of APEC last month in South Korea, when the leaders of the world's two largest economies appeared to have pulled back from a full-blown trade war. For American farmers, that meeting initially meant some short-term relief, but it remains to be seen how long that deal will last, as any deal with the CCP is fragile. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. Russia responds to the latest Ukraine peace plan drafted in Geneva yesterday. The Kremlin saying this version of the plan is not acceptable. Ukraine, meanwhile, suggesting it won't cede any territory currently occupied by Russia. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pozdar has the latest.
Peace plans for the conflict in Ukraine are developing fast. The United States and Ukraine say they've made progress on a revised peace proposal after talks in Geneva on Sunday. But the Kremlin doesn't support the revised plan.
We learned this morning about the European plan, which is completely unconstructive and not acceptable for us at first glance. Mr. Rubio announced that the U.S. side has been completely satisfied by the Geneva talks with the Ukrainians. But he also said that there were 26 points, so there were a lot of different speculations. It is unclear whom to believe.
The White House says the new framework strengthens protections for Ukraine and keeps its sovereignty non-negotiable. Kiev suggests it doesn't support a previous U.S. drafted plan, which would have included Ukraine ceding occupied territory.
Putin wants legal recognition for what he has stolen, to break the principle of territorial integrity and sovereignty. And that's the main problem.
Zelensky added that Ukraine will continue working with its partners like the US and European nations. The European Council president also says the bloc will keep on supporting Ukraine as peace talks are moving forward. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer weighed in as well on Monday.
Because the conflict in Ukraine has had a direct impact here in the United Kingdom. So progress, yes, more work to do, but we've all got our sleeves rolled up, ready to put in those hard yards, hopefully to get to the right outcome.
Other European leaders echoed that sentiment, saying they're planning to continue supporting Ukraine. And members of the European Union also held a special meeting on the peace plan on Monday during their visit to Angola. They were there to meet with African leaders for a 2-day summit aimed at increasing multilateral cooperation and trade.
1/3 of Africa's total trade is with Europe, and Africa exports to Europe more than twice as much as to China, for example.
The summit also seeking to improve EU relations with African nations, where China has sought increasing economic influence. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
As the Trump administration works with Ukraine on a peace plan, lawmakers are gearing up to sanction Russia. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
As U.S. leaders are working towards a peace deal to end the Russia-Ukraine war, lawmakers are pushing ahead with plans to sanction Moscow. Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick urged the administration to continue working its peace through strength strategy. He plans to force a vote on Russian sanctions. Republican leaders in the House and Senate have previously voiced support for sanctioning Russia, and Trump has green-lighted the effort.
We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to give the administration the tools that they need to facilitate and bring about a peaceful resolution between Russia and Ukraine.
The expected vote comes as the Trump administration is working to close a deal to end the war in Ukraine. As details are still being worked out, Congressman Michael McCaul is the former chairman for the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He's pushing to ensure an ironclad security agreement for Ukraine to prevent a repeat of the failed Budapest Agreement of 1994. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
What could the latest peace talks mean for Ukraine? Tonight on Capitol Report with Steve Lance, hear from Dan Rice, a former special advisor to Ukraine's commander-in-chief. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The Trump administration is moving to designate certain chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terrorist organizations. President Trump signed an executive order today. The Muslim Brotherhood was founded in Egypt in 1928. It has a transnational network with chapters across the Middle East, in Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. In his order, Trump said that the Muslim Brotherhood engages in and supports violence that harms U.S. citizens and U.S. interests. The group has worked with Hamas and Hezbollah terror groups in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks on Israel. Trump said such activities threaten Americans as well as U.S. partners in the region. The president is asking the Secretary of State and the Treasury Secretary to begin the designation process. The move would bring sanctions against the Islamist group. In the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad says they found a body of a deceased hostage. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, thousands of residents attended a funeral for a senior commander in the Hezbollah terrorist group. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Thousands of people filled the streets of Lebanon's capital Monday to mourn the loss of a senior leader in the Hezbollah terrorist group. Ali Tabatabai was the chief of staff of the Iran-backed group, and he was killed when Israeli forces launched this airstrike in Beirut on Sunday. The U.S. State Department had a reward of up to $5 million for information on the Hezbollah commander. The Lebanese government has vowed to disarm the Iran-backed group, but Israel says they will not allow Hezbollah to rebuild its power. An Israeli resident living near the Lebanese border shared his thoughts on Israel's airstrike in Beirut.
After what happened yesterday, I thought that something will happen, but it looked so quiet, everything is quiet. I hope it will stay like this. We don't need another battle or another war.
Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad said they've located the body of one of the 3 remaining hostages in the territory. However, they did not say when the body would be handed over. A U.S. envoy at the United Nations on Monday said the U.S. was committed to ensuring that the bodies of all the hostages are returned. And she gave details of what the International Stabilization Force, or ISF, will be responsible for in the Gaza Strip.
The ISF will help create a Gaza free of terrorist rule and safe for aid and investment by protecting civilians. This includes humanitarian operations and coordination to secure humanitarian corridors.
Similar to the situation in Lebanon, Israel's ambassador to the UN said Israel will not allow terrorists to rebuild. And he said this about the Iran-backed Hamas terrorist group.
They can take off their green handbands, but changing into a civilian outfit does not turn terrorists into partners for peace. This plan would succeed only if Hamas permanently loses its weapons.
The Israel Defense Forces on Monday reported killing 5 terrorists in the Gaza Strip who had crossed the yellow line and approached Israeli troops in a threatening manner. Jason Perry, NTD News.
The Department of War has opened an investigation into Democratic Senator Mark Kelly. 6 lawmakers recently released a controversial video, and Kelly is the only one of them who falls under the department's jurisdiction. In the video, the lawmakers urge members of the military not to follow illegal orders. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
I think what Senator Mark Kelly was actually trying to do was intimidate the 1.3 million active duty service members.
The Pentagon is investigating Democratic Senator Mark Kelly after he and a few other Democratic lawmakers released a video urging the military to defy illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
Kelly's accused of misconduct, and he's being singled out because he's the only one of the 6 lawmakers in this video that falls under the War Department's jurisdiction. The department said in a Monday statement that all service members are reminded that they have a legal obligation to obey lawful orders and that the orders are presumed to be lawful. A service member's personal philosophy does not justify or excuse the disobedience of an otherwise lawful order. The Pentagon also said it's illegal to interfere with the loyalty and morale of the armed forces. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth wrote in a subsequent post on X, "The video made by the seditious 6 was despicable, reckless, and false. Kelly's conduct brings discredit upon the armed forces and will be addressed appropriately." Kelly responded on social media touting his military accomplishments and adding that if this is meant to intimidate me and other members of Congress from doing our jobs and holding this administration accountable, it won't work. Kelly also referenced President Trump's recent comments on social media when this video came out. Trump wrote, "Seditious behavior punishable by death," and later saying,
"In the old days, if you said a thing like that, that was punishable by death."
Yeah, but you're not threatening them. A lot of people are interpreting there's a threat and there's security.
Well, I'm not threatening them, but I think they're in serious trouble.
The video released by the Democratic lawmakers didn't reference what orders might be potentially illegal. The key message coming from the administration is that all orders are lawful.
And not a single one of them, since they've been pressed, can point to a single illegal order that this administration has given down because it does not exist.
As the investigation progresses, Senator Kelly may be recalled to active duty to face a court-martial or administrative punishment. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Coming up, the U.S. government designates a Venezuelan cartel allegedly led by the Madura regime as a foreign terrorist organization. Luis Martinez has the details. The pace of deportations reaches a record high, and the Department of Homeland Security could be working to boost it even more. Jason Blair reports. And a crowded California governor's race is shaping up to replace term-limited Governor Gavin Newsom, with one candidate now pushing to allow voting by phone. Christina Corona has more on that story when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The Trump administration has officially designated the Cartel of the Suns as a foreign terrorist organization. The designation increases pressure on the Venezuelan regime of Nicolas Maduro. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, has more on the story.
The Cartel of the Suns takes its name from the sun insignia that Venezuelan generals carry on their uniforms. According to the U.S. government, the cartel was formed by top Venezuelan officials and is led by Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. government now considers members of the Venezuelan regime to be members of a foreign terrorist organization.
Well, it brings a whole bunch of new options to the United States. And he is indicted and wanted for he's not a legitimately elected leader of Venezuela. Everybody knows that. To give options to the president to ultimately say our hemisphere will not be controlled by narco-terrorists. It will not be controlled by cartels. It will not be controlled by what illegitimate regimes try to push toward the American people.
The designation comes as the U.S. has the largest military buildup in the region since the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, is meeting with military commanders in Puerto Rico. The Venezuelan regime has mobilized its military and militias in response to the U.S. military buildup and has become increasingly paranoid and accusing the U.S. of sabotaging oil infrastructure in the country.
¿Qué pasa porque cada quien defienda? Because each person must defend their space, the oil and gas facilities, defend them from the CIA. The CIA, who have slipped them a bill and said, go over there and damage the Venezuelan economy. That's the CIA's plan.
Congressional Republicans have backed the president's orders to strike narco-terrorists in the region. Over 80,000 Americans died last year due to illegal drugs.
If an invasion does take place down in Venezuela against Maduro, that would trigger a War Powers Act response by Congress. we would have 60 days if the conflict is still ongoing to determine whether a declaration of war is warranted or an authorized use of military force.
At least 7 major airlines have suspended flights to and from Venezuela over the weekend after the FAA warned of heightened military activity in and around Venezuelan airspace. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
ICE deportations have hit a record pace. The reported number of illegal immigrants in custody has increased by 62% since January. And the Department of Homeland Security says they're working fast to deport them. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Immigrations and Customs Enforcement is reporting a record 65,000 illegal immigrants in custody as of November 15th. This is up from about 40,000 in January. The Department of Homeland Security commenting that under the leadership of Secretary Noem, DHS is working rapidly to remove these aliens from detention centers to their final destination. The current pace represents roughly 1,200 deportations a day since October 1st, as reported by the Washington Times. If this pace were kept up for 12 months, it would yield over 450,000 deportations. Some media reports have claimed that less than half of the illegal immigrants detained have a criminal record. However, the DHS maintains that 70% of the detainees have committed crimes. Earlier this month, White House border czar Tom Homan said that the remaining 30% are mostly national security threats.
Most national security threats don't have a criminal history. We arrested several thousand Iraqi nationals. Most of them don't have a criminal history. Why is that? Because they're laying low to do whatever they want to do. A lot of them are gang members. A lot of gang members don't have criminal history.
On Sunday, the DHS reported that a few days after they started their immigration enforcement operation in Charlotte, North Carolina, about 20% of students in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school district stopped showing up for class.
1 in 5 seats suddenly became empty. It should concern every American that in a major city, hundreds of miles from the southern border, a large share of those seats that should belong to American children are occupied by children of illegal immigrants.
School officials did not offer an explanation for the increase in absences and told parents that students were expected to attend class as normal. The DHS has continued its aggressive campaign to hire more personnel, especially for ICE. Border Patrol recently opened up some term appointment roles for retirees if they wish to return, offering them double pay. Jason Blair, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A former BBC editorial advisor says the broadcaster is not institutionally biased, though he told British politicians it does have editorial failings. It comes after a leaked memo revealed the BBC has selectively edited one of President Trump's speeches and made it appear he called for violence by splicing together completely separate parts of his speech. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
The corporation now faces a $1 billion lawsuit from the president of one of our closest allies. I don't need to spell out to you the seriousness of this for everybody in the room or those watching, but suffice to say it can't be overstated what is a critical time for the BBC and public service broadcasting in general.
The author of a report that plunged the BBC into crisis said the broadcaster was not institutionally biased, but did have editorial failings. Former BBC editorial advisor Michael Prescott's leaked dossier cited failings in the editing of a Trump speech and allegations of bias in the BBC's coverage of the Israel-Hamas war and transgender issues. Prescott said he hoped his criticisms would help fix the corporation.
If it had found that it had been Kamala Harris misrepresented, not Donald Trump, I would have acted in exactly the same way, because I don't want the BBC's coverage skewed this way or that way. I just want it to be impartial, accurate and fair.
A documentary by BBC's Panorama show spliced together 2 parts of Trump's speech from January 6, 2021, the day of the Capitol breach. The edit gave the impression Trump had made a direct call for violent action by putting together 2 sound bites that were 54 minutes apart and said in completely different contexts. Prescott said there was an issue of denial at the BBC.
The management did not accept there was a problem either overall with the US presidential coverage or with the Panorama programme. Simple as that.
The leaked report led to the resignation of 2 BBC chiefs. Trump has threatened to sue the broadcaster for defamation for anywhere between $1 and $5 billion. The BBC has apologized and retracted the Panorama episode, but says it does not believe there is a basis for the defamation claim. Prescott initially declined to comment on the merits of the claim, but was pressed further.
I just realised you didn't quite answer my last question. Do you agree that Donald Trump's reputation has been tarnished by this documentary?
Probably not.
The Federal Communications Commission is investigating the BBC over the speech edit. The FCC said the BBC depicts President Trump voicing a sentence that Trump never uttered, saying that appears to meet the definition of publishing a materially false and damaging statement. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, UK.
U.S. Representative and newly declared gubernatorial candidate Eric Swalwell wants to give Californians another way to vote. He is pushing for voting by phone during a competitive race to replace Governor Gavin Newsom. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell, who announced his bid for California governor last week, says he wants voters to be able to cast their ballots using their phones. He discussed the idea on CNN's The Story Is with Elex Michelson on Saturday.
I want us to be able to vote by phone. I think every Californian vote by phone. Yeah, if we can do our taxes, do our, make our healthcare appointments, make essentially do your banking online, you should be able to vote by phone.
Swalwell said he wants California to aim higher than simply doing a little better than Republican-led states when it comes to voting.
I want us to be a blue state that doesn't do just a little bit better than like Georgia or Alabama when it comes to like voting access. I want us to max out democracy. Also, as it relates to democracy, if you wait in line for 30 minutes or more, if you do want to vote in person, I think you should fine every county for every minute that a person has to wait longer.
He also said he wants to modernize California's Department of Motor Vehicles so people no longer have to make in-person visits. The race to replace Governor Gavin Newsom is already crowded. On the Democratic side, candidates include Representatives Eric Swalwell and Katie Porter, former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, former State Controller Betty Yee, former School Superintendent Tony Thurmond, attorney and former Health Secretary Javier Becerra, billionaire Tom Steyer, and former Majority Leader Ian Calderon. Several candidates are facing controversies. Porter has faced backlash after a viral interview and a past video showing her scolding a staffer. Becerra's campaign is under scrutiny after a longtime aide used a campaign account to boost their own pay, although Becerra himself is not accused of wrongdoing. On the Republican side, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, former Fox commentator Steve Hilton, and businessman Leo Zaki are aiming to secure one of the top 2 spots for the November election. In California, the top 2 candidates move on to the November election no matter their party. With so many candidates, they could advance with just over 20% of the vote. A Republican hasn't won a statewide race in nearly 2 decades. The last time was in 2006 when Arnold Schwarzenegger was re-elected governor. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Coming up, the government wants to usher in the golden age of travel in a new campaign. They're advising people to dress with respect when coming to the airport and use good mannerisms. David Lamb has what travel officials are saying. And in the NBA, Hall of Famer Chauncey Biilups pleaded not guilty today in a case alleging his involvement in rigged poker games. Dave Martin joins us to discuss what's next when we come back. And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in the NBA as former player turned coach Chauncey Biilups pleaded not guilty today in the alleged rigged poker scandal. Now, you were actually at the proceedings today. What stood out to you?
I think Biilups, pleading not guilty was certainly the major revelation today, though he'd already denied wrongdoing through his lawyers previously. And Biilups is maybe the biggest name here. I mean, he's played 17 years in the NBA. He was a 5-time All-Star, won the 2004 NBA title with Detroit, and of course, he is a Hall of Famer. In retirement, Yeah, he's been a head coach of the Portland Trailblazers for the last 4 years. Right now, though, he is on unpaid leave. Now, after his arraignment today, they had a status conference with the judge, the prosecutors, and all 31 defendants and their lawyers. Lasted approximately 45 minutes. They are then due back on March 4th for another status conference update. Now, in addition to the charges of the rigged poker games, there are also charges relating to insider information on sports betting. So some are charged in both cases, some are charged in just one. Now, the judge has said he'd like the trial to start by September. Prosecutors have said they've had discussions about plea bargains, but says no deals have been offered yet. So that's where we're standing to.
All right, thanks for that. Shifting gears to college basketball, though. Purdue remained at #1 in the new AP rankings this week after their big win over Texas Tech. Meanwhile, Kansas dropped out of the rankings.
Yeah, those poor Jayhawk fans, huh? It's not fun to see their beloved KU team not in the top 25 right now. But the Jayhawks, of course, lost to Duke last week, and they're without freshman star Darren Peterson, who has a hamstring injury. He's played in just 2 of their 6 games thus far. And he's scheduled to miss their games tomorrow and the next day. And they did actually win without him today, beating Notre Dame. Peterson, of course, missed that game as well. But Purdue, still #1. Arizona, meanwhile, went from 4th to 2nd after winning at UConn. Huskies then, meanwhile, dropped from 3rd to 5th after the close loss. Michigan State actually made the biggest jump in the rankings this week, going from 17th up to 11th after beating Kentucky. Wildcats, meanwhile, dropped 7 spots to 19th after the loss. Now, today and really this week, there's a number of teams in action in Las Vegas for the Players Era Festival. Right now, 3rd-ranked Houston is playing Syracuse. Tonight, we've got ranked teams like Gonzaga, Alabama, Auburn, and Michigan all in action. So Vegas is the place to be, I guess, right?
Sure, sounds like it. Now moving to the NFL, the Cleveland Browns announced that rookie quarterback Dillon Gabriel has cleared the concussion protocol. Is he in line to start on Sunday?
No, but not because of that recent injury. Head coach Kevin Stefanski said fellow rookie Shedeur Sanders will get his 2nd straight start instead. Now, Sanders looked pretty good yesterday in the Browns' 24-10 win, completed 11 of 20 passes for 209 yards and a touchdown and a pick, so it was a good start. Now, if you remember, Sanders had that standout career at Colorado. Somehow, though, he slipped from being a projected, 1st-round pick all the way down to being a round 5 selection. So in a way, this is some redemption for him, though I'll grant it's only 1 game. He certainly made some nice passes, though. Meanwhile, the Browns have a pretty good defense. If Sanders can somehow open up their offense, maybe they can make a late run, though they're already 3-8 currently. Now they play 7-4 San Francisco next Sunday.
Well, speaking of San Francisco, they host the Carolina Panthers tonight in a battle of playoff hopefuls.
Yeah, exactly. The 49ers have somehow managed that 7-4 record despite a number of injuries. One of those isn't actually running back Christian McCaffrey, who will finally face his former team for the first time tonight since they traded him in 2022. McCaffrey right now leads the NFL in touches. Meanwhile, 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy has played just 3 games this season, dealing with that nagging toe injury, but he will start tonight, marking the first time he's made back-to-back starts this season. Mac Jones behind him, though, has filled in admirably in his absence. Panthers, meanwhile, are just 6-5, but that's good enough to at least be tied for first in the NFC South right now with Tampa Bay. Now, winning that division would appear to be their best route to the playoffs. Tonight's game, it is at 8:15 Eastern Time in San Francisco on ABC, ESPN. Niners are 7.5-point favorites. You got all that, Tiff?
Totally. All right, well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
The Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays are coming up. To make air travel smoother and more pleasant, transportation officials are talking about the golden age of travel. NTD's David Lamb has more.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
That's the start of the Transportation Department's new civility campaign called The Golden Age of Travel Starts With You, comparing air travel from back in the day to today in a 1.5-minute video.
Let's bring civility and manners back. Ask yourself, are you helping a pregnant woman put her bag in the overhead bin? Are you dressing with respect? Are you keeping control of your children? The golden age of travel begins with you.
The campaign is intended to restore courtesy and class to air travel.
For us, this week is our Super Bowl. And I'm here to tell you we've got a great plan. We're past the lapse, controllers are back at work, and of course we hope we have everyone treating one another with respect, so follow the golden rule. I will tell you, however, that we will not hesitate to utilize our enforcement authorities if anyone is causing any problems in the airport or on aircraft.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says manners don't stop at the gate and things aren't as they used to be. The Transportation Department says that since 2019, the FAA has seen a 400% increase of in-flight outbursts. In 2021, there were almost 14,000 incidents regarding unruly passengers, where 1 in 5 flight attendants experienced physical incidents.
How do we, maintain maybe some of that frustration we have as we travel this Thanksgiving season? We should say please and thank you to our pilots and to our flight attendants. I would encourage people to maybe dress a little better, which encourages us to maybe behave a little better.
Flight restrictions have also been rolled back. The department is building a new air traffic control system, boosting air traffic control hiring through its academy, and trying to make travel more family-friendly. The FAA expects the 2025 Thanksgiving holiday period to be the busiest for air travel in 15 years. David Lamb, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. Unfortunately, we didn't get to our interview tonight due to some technical difficulties. But for round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.